What happens when a beloved British actor sits down for what should be a lighthearted morning chat show interview, only to face an ambush of personal attacks disguised as journalism? In just 39 seconds, one host's shocking question would expose the toxic underbelly of daytime television and trigger one of the most dramatic walk-offs in TV history. Hugh Grant arrived at the Loose Women studio that Tuesday morning, expecting the usual promotional routine. His new romantic comedy was hitting cinemas nationwide, and morning television was supposed to be a safe space where celebrities could share charming anecdotes and plug their latest projects. The makeup artist had just finished touching up his face when a production assistant knocked gently on his dressing room door. 5 minutes, Mr. Grant. They're ready for you on set. Hugh straightened his tie and took a deep breath. He'd done this dance countless times before. Chat shows were like muscle memory now after decades in the business. Walk out, wave to the audience, sit down, answer questions about the film, maybe share a funny story from set, and wrap up with a plug for opening weekend. Simple. The studio audience erupted in applause as Hugh walked onto the brightly lit set. The four hosts sat behind their signature curved desk, each with their morning coffee and notes spread in front of them. Denise Welch occupied the center position, her authority as the veteran panelist, clear from her posture and the way the other hosts deferred to her. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the absolutely gorgeous Hugh Grant. Hugh waved to the crowd and made his way to the guest chair, positioned directly across from the panel. The camera operators moved into position as he settled in, adjusting his jacket and offering his trademark, slightly awkward but charming smile. Hugh, lovely to have you here with us this morning, Denise began. Her voice carried that practiced television warmth that morning show hosts perfect over years of live broadcasting. Now, before we talk about your new film, which I'm sure is wonderful, I have to ask about something that's been all over the tabloids recently. Hugh's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. This wasn't how these interviews typically started. Usually there was some pleasant banter first, maybe a comment about the weather or how early morning television was for someone used to film schedules. Well, I'd rather focus on the film if we could, Hugh replied diplomatically. It's really quite funny, and I think your viewers would enjoy hearing about working with such a talented cast. But Denise wasn't deterred. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes gleaming with the kind of predatory interest that made tabloid journalists famous. Oh, we'll get to that. But surely you can understand that our viewers are curious about your personal life. After all, you've been quite the romantic figure over the years. Denise leaned in closer, her smile no longer warm but sharp, predatory. Come now, Hugh. You're a public figure. Surely you understand that people are interested in the real Hugh Grant, not just the characters you play. And there have been some rather interesting developments in your love life lately, haven't there? Hugh shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The studio lights suddenly felt hotter, and he could see the camera operators moving in for tighter shots. What had started as a friendly promotional chat was now feeling more like an interrogation. I'm not sure what you're referring to, he said, though his tone suggested he already knew. Well, there have been reports about your relationship status. Some rather explosive claims about your behavior in past relationships. Don't you think your fans deserve to know what kind of man they're supporting when they buy tickets to your films? Denise's words hung in the air like a dark cloud. Hugh's jaw tightened, and his charming facade began to crack. This isn't journalism, he said slowly, his voice firm and controlled. This is character assassination disguised as celebrity gossip. Denise smiled, but there was nothing warm in it now. Oh, but Hugh, surely you can see how some might say that's convenient. Play the charming romantic lead on screen. But when it comes to real life, the stories we hear paint quite a different picture, don't they? The other hosts exchanged uneasy glances. One tried to intervene. Perhaps we could talk about the film now? I'd love to hear about working with. Denise cut him off sharply. I think this is important. Hugh, you've been married for several years now. But before that, there were some rather public incidents, weren't there? Some embarrassing situations that might make people question whether you're truly the romantic hero you portray on screen. Hugh's hands gripped the armrests, knuckles widening. The audience, moments before laughing at his charm, now sat silently, sensing the shift from playful banter to something far more confrontational. I'm sorry, Hugh said, his voice trembling with barely contained anger. Are you seriously bringing up tabloid gossip from decades ago on morning television? Is this what passes for journalism on this show? Denise's eyes gleamed. Now, Hugh, don't get defensive. I'm simply asking the questions our viewers want answered. After all, you're asking them to spend their hard-earned money on your film. Don't they have a right to know who they're supporting? Don't they have a right to know whether the film is worth watching? Hugh's famous charm completely vanished. They don't have a right to dissect my personal relationships from 20 years ago. That's not journalism. That's voyeurism. Sit down, Hugh, Denise commanded, her voice sharp and unwavering. We're not finished. Some important conversations about celebrity responsibility need to be had. Hugh's eyes flashed with anger. What about journalist responsibility? What about treating guests with basic human decency instead of turning a promotional interview into character assassination? The audience was completely silent now, captivated by the unfolding drama. The other hosts looked frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let events play out. Hugh's calm, charming demeanor had dissolved into a rare, raw honesty that held everyone's attention. This isn't journalism, Hugh continued, voice rising steadily. This is exploitation, using human pain and private struggles as entertainment, taking someone's private failures and turning them into content, and you have the audacity to call it accountability. Denise tried to speak, but Hugh raised a hand, cutting her off. No, Denise. You've had your say. Now it's my turn. You invited me here under false pretenses. You promised my publicist a standard promotional interview about my film. Instead, you've used your platform to attack my character based on nothing but tabloid gossip and anonymous claims. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, sensing that this was no ordinary interview. Every word from Hugh carried weight, commanding the room. He stepped closer to the panel, his voice gaining strength. Accountability, he said slowly, is not about humiliating someone for your show's entertainment value. It's about owning your actions. Yes, but it's also about responsibility as a journalist. Responsibility to treat guests with dignity. Responsibility to your viewers to provide actual information, not gossip disguised as hard questions. Denise's composure faltered for the first time, but she tried to regain control. Hugh, you're overreacting. Overreacting, Hugh interrupted, his voice filled with controlled fury. You are deliberately using your platform to bully someone in front of millions. You talk about accountability, but where is yours? When do you account for the pain you inflict? When do you account for the damage caused to someone who came in good faith to promote their work? The other hosts exchanged glances, clearly horrified. This confrontation had spun far out of control. The audience, initially there for a light-hearted chat, now witnessed a profound clash of ethics versus entertainment. This is not accountability, Hugh continued, his tone now icy. This is exploitation, turning someone's private life into a spectacle, taking decades-old personal matters and weaponizing them for a dramatic television moment. And you, Denise, are smiling while doing it. The tension in the studio was palpable. Hugh's anger was precise, measured, and impossible to ignore. He had taken control of the narrative, exposing the ambush for exactly what it was, a show built on humiliation, not journalism. Denise's expression shifted from confidence to shock, realizing the audience was witnessing her attack being dismantled in real time. She had underestimated him, and the studio could feel the power dynamic changing. Hugh's final words in this segment carried both warning and clarity. If this is what passes for journalism on daytime television, then our society has a problem. You can entertain people, but you cannot destroy human dignity and call it reporting. Hugh took a deep breath, his face a mixture of anger, disgust, and profound disappointment. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of what had become one of the most dramatic instances of daytime television confrontation. Denise, he said, his voice calm but piercing, you wanted a story. Well, here it is. This is what happens when journalism dies and is replaced by voyeurism. This is what happens when entertainment is valued over human dignity. And this is what happens when people in positions of power forget that their guests are human beings, not content to be consumed. Denise opened her mouth to respond, but Hugh raised his hand. No, you've had your say. Now I'm going to have mine. He adjusted his jacket, squared his shoulders, and took a step toward the exit. Finish this properly, one of the other hosts pleaded. Hugh shook his head. Finished properly? There's nothing proper about this. There never was. This was an ambush from the moment I walked in. He paused, looking directly into the camera. To anyone watching this, I came here today to talk about a film I'm proud of, one I hope will make people laugh and feel good for a couple of hours. Instead, I've been subjected to a character assassination, based on tabloid gossip and speculation. And if this is what passes for journalism on daytime television, then we are all in serious trouble. With that, Hugh Grant walked off the Loose Women set, leaving the hosts frozen in shock and the audience in stunned silence. The cameras lingered for a few seconds, capturing Denise's incredulous expression and the uneasy shuffling of the co-hosts before cutting to a commercial. In those few moments, the studio atmosphere had shifted completely. What was meant to be a charming promotional interview had transformed into a live demonstration of ethics versus exploitation. Hugh had refused to play along, refusing to be complicit in turning his personal history into entertainment. He had reclaimed his dignity and sent a message that resonated far beyond the confines of the studio. The audience, initially gathered for lighthearted banter, had witnessed something rare, a celebrity standing up not just for himself, but for the principle that private life should not be weaponized for ratings. Social media erupted shortly after, clips of the walk-off spreading rapidly, discussions emerging about the responsibilities of journalists and broadcasters. The moment was more than just drama. It was a lesson. Celebrities are human beings, not story fodder. Journalism requires ethics, not just spectacle. Entertainment must respect dignity, or it risks becoming exploitation. Hugh Grant's walk-off reminded viewers everywhere that even in a world hungry for sensationalism, there is power in standing firm, speaking truth, and refusing to participate in cruelty disguised as hard questions. And so, in just a few tense minutes, a routine morning interview became a cultural moment, a warning and a message that would resonate far longer than any promotional segment ever could. Respect, accountability, and integrity. These were the true stars of that morning's unexpected drama.